Are you deaf, old woman? I said this path is closed. The voice was young, sharp, and coated in the kind of unearned arrogance that only a 20-year-old in peak physical condition can muster. It belonged to a recruit, broad-shouldered and sunburnt, with the letters SEAL stenciled on his t-shirt like a badge of impending glory. He stood with two of his equally formidable squad mates, blocking the narrow asphalt path that wound through the coastal scrub of the naval base. The woman they were addressing didn't seem to notice the wall of muscle in front of her. She was 80, maybe older, with skin like crinkled parchment and a frame so slight it looked like a stiff ocean breeze could carry her away. She wore a simple canvas jacket against the morning chill and carried a small, weathered trowel in one hand. Her eyes, however, were another story. They were a pale, clear gray, like a winter sea, and they held a stillness that was deeply unsettling. She looked past the recruits, toward a small, manicured plot of land overlooking the water, a memorial garden. I need to tend the roses, she said, her voice quiet but not frail. It had a low, resonant quality, like stones rubbing together underwater. The lead recruit, a man named Peterson, scoffed. He took a step closer, puffing out his chest. The roses can wait. This is a designated training area. We're running drills. Now, turn around and go back to the visitor center, Grandma. His friend snickered. They were a unit, a pack, brimming with testosterone and the brutal confidence that came from surviving the early weeks of BUD/S training. They saw a frail, confused old lady who had wandered into the wrong place. They saw a nuisance. The woman, Evelyn, didn't move. Her gaze remained fixed on the garden. They were planted for the men who didn't come home. They require care. Peterson's patience, thin to begin with, snapped. I don't care if they were planted by the president himself. You are a civilian in a restricted military zone. That makes you a security risk. Now move, or I'll have you escorted. He gestured vaguely with his thumb, as if shooing a stray dog. Evelyn's eyes finally shifted, leaving the distant garden and landing squarely on Peterson. The placid surface of her gaze didn't change, but he felt a sudden, inexplicable chill, as if he were the one being assessed and found wanting. For the first time, he noticed her hands. They weren't the soft, delicate hands of a grandmother. They were gnarled, yes, but also strong, the knuckles slightly enlarged, the fingers long and capable. The skin was crisscrossed with a fine network of silvery scars, the kind you get from work, not from baking. You have your orders, son, she said, her tone level. And I have mine. This was too much for Peterson. The sheer audacity of this frail old woman defying him, a future Navy SEAL, was an insult to the very uniform he aspired to wear. He saw it as a test of his authority, a challenge he had to meet with force. That's it, he snarled, his face reddening. You've had your chance. He reached out and clamped his hand around her upper arm, intending to physically turn her around and march her away. His grip was firm, the kind he'd used to subdue an opponent. The moment his fingers tightened on the worn fabric of her jacket, everything changed. For Evelyn, the pressure on her arm wasn't just a recruit's clumsy attempt at intimidation. It was a ghost touch, an echo from a lifetime ago. The world of the sunny naval base, the scent of salt and diesel, the distant shouts of instructors, the arrogant face of the young man in front of her, dissolved. Flashback. The air is thick, humid, smelling of mud and decay. It's night, a moonless, starless dark in a jungle halfway across the world. She's not 80. She's 30, lean, hard, and invisible in the shadows. The weight of her gear is a familiar comfort. The mission is simple: extract a high-value asset from a guarded compound. Simple, but not easy. Something has gone wrong. An unseen tripwire. A dog's bark. Now, the quiet jungle is alive with shouts. A hand, strong and brutal, clamps down on her arm, just like this one. An enemy soldier, his face a mask of shock and rage in the sudden glare of a flashlight beam. His grip is meant to hold, to break. But he doesn't know who he's holding. He doesn't see the woman. He sees only a target. He feels the subtle shift in her weight, a movement so economical it's almost imperceptible. He feels a sharp, blinding pain as two of her fingers find the pressure point below his jaw. His grip loosens, his body goes limp. It's over in less than a second. Silence returns to the jungle. Back on the path, Peterson felt it too. The moment he grabbed her, the frail old woman seemed to turn to stone. Her body, which he expected to be soft and yielding, became utterly rigid. Her posture shifted, a subtle realignment of her spine and shoulders that made her seem taller, more rooted to the earth. The biggest change was in her eyes. The calm sea was gone. In its place was a frozen lake, hard and deep and ancient. There was no fear in them, no anger. There was nothing but a profound, chilling stillness. Peterson's hand was still on her arm, but he felt an urgent, primal instinct to let go. He felt like a child who had just poked a sleeping crocodile. His bravado evaporated, replaced by a cold knot of confusion and fear. His friends saw it too. Their smirks faded, their postures tensing. Unseen by them, 100 yards away, standing on the second-floor balcony of the training command building, was Chief Petty Officer Davis. He was a 15-year veteran, a man who had seen his share of real-world combat and had little patience for the swagger of recruits. He'd been sipping his morning coffee, watching Peterson and his team, ready to tear into them for slacking off. Then he saw them stop the old woman. He'd seen her around the base for years, always quiet, always heading for the memorial garden. Most people assumed she was a Gold Star mother or widow. Davis had always felt there was something more to her. He'd seen her talk to the base commander once, and the commander had stood a little straighter, his demeanor one of deep, almost reverent respect. Davis watched Peterson grab her arm, and he saw the change. He saw the shift in her stance, a subtle pivot from the balls of her feet that was pure muscle memory. It wasn't the posture of a frail grandmother. It was the ready stance of a fighter. His eyes narrowed. He raised the binoculars he kept on his desk to his eyes, zooming in. He focused on her wrist, where her jacket sleeve had pulled back slightly. And then he saw it, faded by decades of sun and sea, almost lost in the wrinkles of her skin, was the unmistakable shape of a special warfare insignia, a trident. Davis's coffee cup slipped from his fingers, shattering on the concrete balcony. "Oh, you stupid, stupid kids," he breathed, already scrambling for his phone. He didn't call base security. He scrolled to a number he rarely used, a direct line he prayed would be answered. The phone rang twice. Franklin, the voice on the other end, was gravelly, impatient. "Master Chief," Davis said, his voice tight with urgency. "We have a situation at the Memorial Path. Some of the new trainees, they're hassling a civilian woman." "Handle it, Chief." "I'm busy." "Master Chief, it's the old woman. The one who tends the garden," Davis pressed, his heart pounding. Peterson just put his hands on her. "And sir, I think I just saw a trident on her wrist." There was a dead silence on the other end of the line. For a full 5 seconds, the only sound was the crackle of the connection. Then Franklin's voice came back, and all the impatience was gone. It was replaced by a tone colder and harder than steel. "Keep them there. Don't let anyone move. I'm on my way." The line went dead. On the path, the standoff continued. Peterson hadn't let go, but his grip was now uncertain. He was trapped between his own foolish pride and the terrifying stillness of the woman he held. "What's wrong with you?" he stammered, trying to reclaim some authority. Evelyn's eyes blinked once, the frozen lake thawing back into a calm sea. The flashback was over. She was back in the sun, with the smell of the ocean in her nostrils. She looked down at Peterson's hand on her arm, then back up at his face. "You should let go of me now," she said, and it was not a request. Before Peterson could decide what to do, the sound of screeching tires cut through the air. A black command vehicle tore down the service road and skidded to a halt just yards away. The door flew open, and out stepped a man who made the recruits' blood run cold. Master Chief Franklin was a living legend in the SEAL teams. He was a man carved from granite and fury, with a face that looked like it had been in a lifelong argument with the world and won every round. He had served in every major conflict for the past 30 years. His presence alone demanded absolute, unquestioning respect. When he walked onto a training ground, even the instructors stood straighter. He strode toward the small group, his eyes locked on Peterson's hand on Evelyn's arm. His face was a thundercloud of controlled rage. The 3 recruits snapped to attention, their bodies rigid with fear. Peterson, forgetting he was still holding the woman, yanked his hand back as if he'd been burned. Franklin didn't look at them. Not yet. He walked straight to Evelyn, stopping a respectful 2 feet in front of her. He took in her calm demeanor, her simple jacket, and the trowel in her hand. Then, to the absolute, jaw-dropping astonishment of the three recruits, Master Chief Franklin, a man who bowed to no one, drew himself up to his full height, raised his hand in a crisp, perfect salute, and held it. "Ma'am," he said, his voice rumbling with a respect so profound it seemed to shake the very air. "I apologize for the inexcusable behavior of these trainees. It will be dealt with." Evelyn gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "They're just boys, Franklin, full of more vinegar than sense." Franklin held his salute. "That is not an excuse, ma'am." He finally lowered his hand and turned his gaze on the three statues in training uniforms. The full force of his legendary wrath descended upon them. "Peterson," he roared. The recruit flinched as if struck. "What in the hell do you think you are doing?" "Master Chief, she was in a restricted area. I was." "You were what?" Franklin cut him off, stepping so close their noses were almost touching. "You were disrespecting your elders? You were assaulting a civilian? Or were you just being a dumb, arrogant child who thinks a little bit of muscle makes him a man?" The recruits stood ramrod straight, their eyes fixed on the horizon, sweat beading on their foreheads. They had never been the focus of such intense fury. "You three think you're tough," Franklin continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous, serrated whisper. "You think because you can run for miles and swim in a cold ocean that you're worthy of wearing the trident. You're not. You're not even close. You know why?" He paused, letting the question hang in the terrified silence. "Because you have no respect. You have no humility. You look at this woman, and you see someone old and weak. You see a target for your pathetic power trip." He gestured back at Evelyn. "You clueless fools have any idea who you're talking to? Do you?" He didn't wait for an answer. "This is Evelyn Cross. Does that name mean anything to you?" "No, of course it doesn't. They don't teach you history anymore. They just teach you how to fight. But they forgot to teach you who wrote the damn book." He took a deep breath, his voice rising again. "This woman was one of the first. She was operating behind enemy lines when your grandfathers were still in diapers. She was a pioneer in underwater demolition, a master of unconventional warfare. She served for 30 years in the shadows, in places you've only read about in classified reports that you'll never have the clearance to see." The recruits' faces were pale with shock. Their minds struggled to reconcile the image of the frail old woman with the legend Franklin was describing. "That hand-to-hand combat technique you all keep failing in training? The cross-dominance takedown. Guess who it's named after?" "That's right. Her. She invented it. She taught the instructors who taught my instructors. Every single thing you think makes you a badass, she was doing it better, and she was doing it in secret, with none of the glory you kids so desperately crave." He turned back to Evelyn, his expression softening again. "Ma'am, I am truly sorry." Evelyn finally spoke, her voice cutting through the tension. "It's all right, Franklin. They didn't know." She looked at the three young men, who now refused to meet her gaze. Their arrogance had been stripped away, leaving behind raw, shame-faced youth. "Look at me," she said, her voice gentle but firm. All three slowly, reluctantly, raised their eyes to hers. "The uniform you want to wear," she began, "it isn't about strength. Not just physical strength. It's about control. It's about discipline. Mostly, it's about protecting those who can't protect themselves. It's not a weapon to be used against them." She took a step toward Peterson, who flinched again. She stopped in front of him, her clear gray eyes searching his. "You were scared," she said softly. "It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of fact. When I didn't react the way you expected, you got scared. And you defaulted to force. That's a weakness. In our line of work, that weakness gets people killed." Peterson could only nod, his throat too tight to speak. Humiliation burned in his cheeks. Evelyn reached out, not with aggression, but with the slow, deliberate motion of a teacher. She gently took his right hand. "May I?" she asked. He nodded again, numbly. She turned his hand over, her gnarled fingers surprisingly strong as she positioned his palm. "You have strength," she said, tracing the lines of his muscles. "But it's unfocused. You lead with your shoulder, you put all your power into the grab. All your intention is right here." She tapped his bicep. "But the real power is here." Her other hand tapped her own temple. "And here," she tapped her chest, over her heart. With a movement so swift and fluid it was almost a blur, she shifted her weight, used his own forward momentum against him, and applied a whisper of pressure to his wrist and elbow. Peterson found himself spun around, his arm locked behind his back in a hold that was completely inescapable yet caused no pain. He was utterly neutralized. The whole thing took less than a second and required almost no visible effort. She released him just as quickly. He stumbled forward, catching his balance, his mind reeling. He had been completely and effortlessly dominated by an 80-year-old woman. The physical proof was more devastating than any verbal reprimand. "That is control," Evelyn said quietly. "Not hurting, not breaking, just ending the threat. The goal is to finish the fight before it even begins. Your biggest weapon isn't your body. It's your opponent's perception of it." She looked from Peterson to the other two recruits, who stood in stunned silence. "You want to serve? Then learn to see. See past the surface. See the person, not the package. That's the first and most important lesson." She then turned to the Master Chief. "That's enough, Franklin. They've learned their lesson. Don't ruin them. They have potential." Franklin looked at the three humbled recruits, then back at Evelyn. He nodded slowly. "As you say, ma'am." He turned his glare back on the trainees. "You three are on latrine duty for the next month. Every morning before PT. And you will report to Chief Davis for a history lesson on naval special warfare pioneers. You will write me a 10,000-word essay on the contributions of Evelyn Cross. Am I understood?" "Yes, Master Chief," they chorused, their voices cracking with a new, deeply felt respect. "Now get out of my sight," he barked. They practically tripped over each other in their haste to disappear. Alone on the path, Franklin looked at Evelyn. "You're too forgiving, Eve," he said, a hint of a smile touching his lips. "Someone had to be," she replied, her gaze drifting back to the memorial garden. "I have to go now. The roses are waiting." She turned and began walking up the path, her small trowel in hand. She didn't look back. Franklin stood and watched her go, a small, unassuming woman in a canvas jacket, walking with a quiet dignity that radiated more power and authority than an entire platoon of heavily armed soldiers. He watched until she disappeared into the garden, a living ghost, a hidden hero tending to the memory of her fallen brothers. What we witnessed that day was more than just a dressing down of some arrogant recruits. It was a living lesson in the true nature of strength. It's so easy to judge the book by its cover, to dismiss the quiet and the old, to assume that power always shouts and boasts. But the most profound strength, the kind that endures, is quiet. It's humble. It's found in the steady hands of an old woman tending her roses, a woman who carries a history of valor that the world will never see. It reminds us that heroes don't always wear capes or uniforms. Sometimes, they wear worn-out jackets and carry garden tools. And it's our job to have the wisdom and respect to see them for who they truly are. Thank you for watching. We hope this story serves as a reminder to honor the quiet heroes who walk among us. If this story moved you, please consider liking this video, subscribing to our channel for more content like this, and sharing it with someone who might appreciate the message. Your support helps us continue to tell these important stories.